I asked Nigel Farage supporters what they really want, and the answers quite alarming. I'm going to read into this piece from Byline Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Byline Times with the headline of I asked Nigel Farage supporters what they really want, and their answers were alarming. My time spent mingling with Reform supporters online revealed a lot about where the UK could be heading next, argues David Goff. Now, before we go any further, I think it's very important to emphasise that this is online for viewers, and that even though there are Farage supporters, there are Nigel Reform supporters here in the UK, anyone can pretend to be anybody online. Anyone can fake an identity or pretend to be somebody that they claim to be online. And it's also important to understand that whatever you might think of people online or social media, it's not always the view of everyone in the country or the view of a particular place. It's not the factual presentation of what's happening. The best way to know what situation, what people really are thinking, is actually going to those places and meeting them face to face and discussing it with them, chatting to them, literally going down there with a microphone and a camera and talking to them. That's the best way to know for sure. Let's be very, very clear here. This does not. I want to make it very clear to any Reform supporters who may be watching this. This is not. This is a group of Reform supporters that David Goff has come across. This is not all. I hit my mic there. Not all Reform supporters. I want to stress that because I think that's really, really important to emphasise. That it is a perception of what it is. Now, are there some Reform supporters who are, in my opinion, maybe misguided by thinking that Reform is in their best interest? Yes, I do think there are some. I think there are also some who are falling right down this rabbit hole and are not prepared to look any other way. I do think there are some people who are misguided by listening to Reform. I generally believe that. But I want to say that this does not represent all supporters or members, subscribers, shall we say, of Reform UK. And I think that context really does matter when we're talking about this, guys. So let's have a gander into this, shall we? So, with polls showing Reform UK mounting a genuine electoral threat, both Labour and the Conservatives are falling over themselves to counter their offensive. And let's face it, not much would be more effective than the sight of Nigel Farage grinning from your TV screens on election night. But you can't just persuade their potential supporters to not vote for them if you didn't know why they are thinking about it in the first place. This is true. This is absolutely true. The leadership of both main parties seem to think that the only thing Reform supporters get worked up about is immigration. They might be right that the conclusion that they can only win them over by outperforming Reform is based on some alarming, naive assumptions about the people they are trying to convert. Yes, this is definitely true. Both the Conservatives and Labour going on about immigration, while there is absolutely no doubt that immigration is being more handled a lot better than under Labour than they have been with the Conservatives. And the reality is that Reform has a lot more influence when it comes to media attention as well. And it's important to understand that people are fed up of the status quo, the two main parties. And Reform have the biggest microphone when it comes to getting themselves out there. That's not to say that everyone believes in Reform. That yes, there are people like myself who are fed up of the Conservative Labour control of government and they want to see something different. I agree. We do want to see something different. And some people will cast their votes to Reform because some people who may not even be deep into politics look at Nigel Farage and think that he seems like a pretty reasonable guy, even though we know he's a blatant liar and is a charlatan and not someone to be trusted with. But many supporters disagree. They think he's the best. They think he's the best for Britain, which I vehemently disagree. Reform supporters hate the country. So I thought I'd help Keir Starmer and Kevin Bagnall out by attempting to discover what your average Reform supporter actually wants. Despite the Daily Mail and GB News insisting the whole country is desperate to vote for them, I didn't have a lot of luck canvassing my friends and neighbours. It turned out they would rather be thought as a kind of Guardian reading, avocado eating, Palestinian wag flaving, Eddie Izzard supporting vegan. Now that Reform Chief Whip has nightmares about. So I took to the internet and joined a raft of Reform supporting groups to see what their followers were thinking. And I have to say, this was not a pleasant task. Scrolling through hundreds of posts filled with ugly sentiments was like stumbling upon the world's worst online dating site. I had to expect a lot of straightforward patriotism, but in fact, plenty of Reform supporters appeared to actively despise their country. Many posts simply listing complaints about the perceived ills of modern Britain and the modern Brits who live there. Whether it's pride flags, Turkish barbers, the National Trust, or electric cars, they dislike so much about the world outside their window. It's a wonder they ever leave the house. That's shunning Reform supporters like this. You know, if you're a Reform supporter and you're listening to this, and this is the perception you're being paid of you, this isn't a very good image. You're not convincing Reform voters to want to change their perceptions or make them understand what you are thinking in any way, shape, or form by, insulting them, which is what they are doing here. I believe many Reform voters are misguided. But this kind of language here, telling them that they never leave their house and whatnot, that's not a very good. I don't agree with that at all. There were lighter moments. It would be easy to laugh at some of the conjaded logic, so I did. Particularly favourites were posts condemning immigrants for failing to integrate or learn proper English. There were folks so appalled by people travelling to live in the country they weren't born in that they were planning to up sticks and move to Spain. Yeah, a lot of people say that they plan to leave the country and they don't. Several posters repeatedly familiar conspiracy theories were always advanced with conviction of someone who watches too many YouTube videos about microchips in vaccines. So we learnt that the World Economic Forum, assisted by King Charles and George Soros, planned to enslave us all by getting rid of cash machines. More worrying are references to Kigali's plan, a white supremacist delusion that a ruling elite is plotting world domination via false race mixing. Laughable, of course, until you remember that such ideas fuel the paranoia of damaged souls and end up including in some deranged manifesto discovered on a basement computer after a mass shooting. Yeah, let's be very clear. These conspiracy theories, they really don't hold no basis. When you hear these kinds of things, the first thing you should be doing is challenging it, saying, where did you get this information from? What's your reasoning to believe this? Who told you this? Okay, this person told me. Okay, where did this person get their source from on this? No, it's from he's a reliable person. I trust him. Yeah, but where did he get that information from? See, it's important to know the originality of where something came from. So I think that context really matters. A lot with the childish names, calling aims at the Marxists. Tuti Akir, Hammer there are plenty of darker comments. Suggestions that the treacherous Labour government step down, then violence is inevitable are common. That kind of language is very scary. Violence should never be the answer to solving any of our issues. Recently, a contributor posted a video of Starmer's conference speech in 2023 being interrupted by someone showering him with glitter. The comments that followed included several regretting that the protester hadn't used a gun, knife, or acid. I wouldn't even are some of these people really Reform voters, or are they just insane? Why would anyone? And this is the thing, they can say these comments in these groups without any repercussions. Is that okay? Do you think it's okay to want to kill someone? It's not. It's terrible. There is no doubt that these people want change. They have consistent calls to do something. Anything before it's too late to save the country. Marches, council tax boycotts, even petitioning the king to dissolve parliament are proposals but never acted on. There's little signs that the mass booing of the Prime Minister on Thursday evening has taken off yet, but we should all keep our ears open. Among all this important fury, there are generally concerns about the health service. Cost of living, crime, housing, all other things the rest of us worry about. However, these people are falling for the ancient lie that their problems aren't caused by the people with the power to change them, but by the others. And this is where the slope gets real slippery. Lee Anderson's sympathy for the thugs involved in the Southport riots is widely shaped and despised official approval from the party's leadership. The jail Stephen Lackley Yennon, Tommy Robinson, is often lauded as a true patriot and a political prisoner. If Tommy Robinson is a bad man of right-wing politics, then reform might just be the gateway drug. The first step of a path that begins with a wag flavouring viral online and ends with suspiciously straight-armed salutes on the streets. But reform supporters surely aren't actual fascists. Why would they really welcome a British dictatorship? After the next election, what kind of leader would be best for Britain? 81% there said they would have a presidential type. 40% Eric Powell. 5% said a PM. And no one says a PM like in France or Germany who needs different parties to work together in a coalition. So none of them believe in politicians working together. They think it should be just one person to rule it all. I added a poll to one of the largest supporters sites, Nigel Farage for Prime Minister. Britain needs reform, which has over 115,000 members. How would they like the country to be governed after the next election? In just 6 hours, I had more than 1,000 answers, and over 80% voted for a leader who can make laws without reference to MPs. That's a chilling large majority for abandoning parliamentary democracy. Yeah, they think the current, and I agree with them, that the current system we have is broken. But presidential type is not the answer. It should be known that we may not be dealing with the strongest of intellects here. You said that. After someone added his name as a choice. Eric Powell received 50% of the vote, meaning the group's second pick was to be governed by a racist who has been dead for over a quarter of a century. As opinion polls regularly confirm the accused that food banks and A&Es matter more to most voters than the ones at the border. Surely the way to dissolve people from abandoning the British traditions of tolerance and democracy is to deal with real issues rather than pandering to fairy tales that everything would be okay if it wasn't for that lot. But with reform-style ads and videos of poor souls arrested for being forced to work in nail bars, Labour risks legitimising the racism that they're trying to undermine. So if you're Farage supporters, see if you can vote for us after all. They may just see you were right all along. As the Democrats found out in November, if you don't take the chance to improve people's lives, they might just dump you for the nearest narcissistic crackpot while the Conservatives, collapse, allowing reform to creep onto the wings out of the political stage. Labour's failure to address everyday concerns risks thrusting them into the spotlight. The two most common complaints on the Reform Supporters website is that immigrants are bad and the government doesn't care about ordinary people. If Labour can't demonstrate what's the latter, and it is much a lie as the former, we might all get what Reform Supporters really want, President Farage. I don't know about President Farage. There may be some supporters who will watch this and say they're in favour of such a thing. But honestly, considering since they've been MPs, the real question is what. The thing is, I have to say to those, they have power to do things. These MPs, they can do these reform MPs who were elected in the last general election. What have they done for their constituents? What have they done to make people's lives better? That is the question that I've consistently asked. And whenever I've asked that question, nobody from Reform has answered in the comments what they have done to improve the lives of people. What has Nigel Farage done in Clacton? What's he done for Clacton since he's become their MP? What's he done to make their lives better? What has Rupert Lowe done to make their lives better? What has Lee Anderson done to make their lives better? These are genuine questions. Yeah, because if you generally believe in Reform UK, show me evidence of where they have made people's lives better. But you don't. Every time I ask, I don't get answers. So that's why people turn to laughing and mocking Reform voters, because they failed to argue these cases. If you truly believe in a party, if you truly believe in something, show it. Don't just hide behind a keyboard. Show it. The Lib Dems, the Greens, yes, both these parties, they may seem minute, but they have their supporters, and their policies are quite clear if you go and look them up. On the ground, when it comes onto the groundwork, they are doing the groundwork. Since the general election, I think Reform have won out of there's over 20,000 council by-elections, right? Reform have only won like about, I think it's like 10 or 20 from last I saw from some last report I saw. That's not a lot. Like the Greens have over 800, 900. Now obviously the other parties would have far more. But Reform have not gained much traction on a real local level, despite the fact that polls are showing that the majority of Britons are behind them. I wouldn't be so convinced about what polls are telling us. But what do you guys honestly think? What do you guys make of this report by David Goff? What do you make of Reform UK? Do you think that a lot of he says is true? Or maybe some of you have a difference of opinions. Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this across social media, subscribe if you haven't already, check out the Rumble and Patreon for additional content, and if you want to financially support me, hit the join button to join my YouTube membership for as little as 99p. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.